going out there and tearing the joint down, but if you're not, I mean, Eric will tell you, I loved working with Hogan. How easy was that?
Yeah.
Everywhere. I said to Eric one time, and Eric, you've probably forgotten this, I go, let's turn him back to red and yellow. Red and yellow. Eric goes, I don't know. I said, Hulk, we can do it, man. We can do it. So we did something on TV, and Eric puts us, and that's when I knew I was screwed. Eric put me and Hulk in Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit. 3 shows. First time back, red and yellow, right?
Right.
Chicago, I still remember, $486,000. That was on Friday night. Saturday night, Milwaukee, the small building. Not Bradley Center, the small building. $230,000. Roll into Detroit on Sunday, $380,000. Guess what? I never saw Hogan again. You remember that, Eric?
Yes.
Yeah, we rolled, man. And Jesus. I mean, I said, this is great. I mean, we'll take us everywhere. We got they got the TV money, and they said, screw this. We're zapping him again, and I was zapped. But, I mean, I had 3 glorious nights, man. Eric, you got to remember that stuff. It was brutal.
Yeah, I do.
God, you know.
So, Eric, tell us your favorite "That Doesn't Work for Me, Brother" story. That's kind of taken on a life of its own with Hulk Hogan and his creative control in his contract, but nobody had to feel that more than you. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but, it's been so, again, for people who want to create their own, narrative and self-importance, Hulk's creative control contract it's been overblown. He probably used that lever. I'm not saying he didn't, he had his own way of trying to get his way. Don't get me wrong. And that happened, fairly often. But he never threw down. There was only, 1 or 2 times when it got heated or serious. It was never heated between he and I. Even when we disagreed, it wasn't like arguing. But the one that I recall the most, it's the most vivid, is, when Hulk came in, and I think it was 94, it was a big deal, and, he had his, run with Rick, which was great, and everything was good for a while. And then, we'd go to center stage, and the crowd would boo him. There was, not all of them, but enough, and because it was such a small little environment of theater in the round, if you will, you get 30 or 40 fans at ringside booing you, and that's what the cameras pick up.
Yeah, and Jimmy Hart was hollering at you, Eric, we can't be here. We're not coming to center stage.
Yeah,
good Lord.
It was obvious, and it was happening everywhere we went. Some places more than others, and some places maybe not at all. But it was not the reaction that Hulk would want, certainly, and it's certainly not the reaction we wanted. So at the time this incident occurred, I had my own airplane, and I was flying around a lot, and I loved to fly. Cessna 210. Yep. And
no, I'm not getting on with you yet. With pressurized or not, one-engine planes to me don't work. He tried to get me on a couple of times. I said, I don't think so.
I jumped in. I called Hulk, and I said, "Man, I got an idea. I want to float it by you. I'm gonna come down to Tampa and let's meet." He said, "Great, come on down." He was happy to hear from me. So I jumped in my plane. I flew down, and I rented a car, got to his house, welcomed me in. That's when he had the big mansion. Rick, you were
Yeah, of course, I've been there.
Welcomed me in. Handed me a beer. It was like 2 good friends. Hadn't seen each other in a while. It was in the middle of the afternoon. I remember it was like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Was he still working for us then? Working for you then?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. He had just, he was, like I mentioned in our last interview, he only had 4 pay-per-views a year, so we didn't use them all the time. So we were gearing up to, figure out what we're going to do with them, for the next series of pay-per-views. And I flew down, and this is where I suggested that he turn heel for the very first time. And he sat and he listened to me. He was very polite. And he started stroking his Fu Manchu. And I went, okay, this isn't going well, because the minute he reaches for that Fu Manchu and starts stroking it, he's actually trying to think of how he's going to say, hell no, but say it more nicely. So I see him stroking his Fu Manchu, and he kind of grunted to himself, and he said, "Can't do that, brother," or something to the effect.
You talking about you wanted him to go to NWO, right?
No, this is before I even thought of NWO.
Oh,
this
okay.
Is like This is like 6 months or a year before.
Oh, okay.
NWO.
Yeah. I don't remember that, but okay.
Yeah, and we, I didn't talk about it with anybody else but him. So he sat down and I laid it out the best way I could. And he paused and he stroked his Fu Manchu and said, "No, brother, I can't do that." And he said and he looked at me. And he wasn't mad or mean or aggressive when he said it, but he goes, "Eric, you'll never understand me or my character until you walk a mile in my red and yellow boots." And then he paused, and then he looked at his watch, and he said, "Thanks for coming down. I got to go pick up my kids at school. See ya." And that was the nicest way he could throw me out of his house. That was Hulk Hogan's version of throwing me off the property. And I took it for what it was. It was like, hell no, I got to go leave. And I jumped in my car and I left. And then right after that, he went off to go do a movie called Santa with Muscles. And then that's when the NWO thing started, and he finally came back and decided turning heel was the right thing to do. But that was the first time, really, up at that point, that he ever really played the creative control card.
Yeah.
Do you think that Nick Patrick may have had Hogan in his ear to change the finish from a fast count to a regular pace count? I heard that question at WrestleCon and was fascinated by your answer.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, anything's possible.
What match you talking about?
Starrcade 97. It was Sting. That's the big Sting, Hulk Hogan. Sting had been in the rafters for a year, that whole deal.
Yeah. Okay.
No, here's why I don't think that was the case. I think it was probably more of a case of just a screwy excuse for a finish. And again, anything's possible, but I know what I believe. And this is I can't even articulate the amount of respect I have for Steve Borden and his character Sting. Okay.
Yeah. I see him all the time now. He looks great.
At that time, you got Starrcade, which is your question, finish at Starrcade. We had built Sting up in that Crow character, that spooky Crow character, for I think a year.
That's right.
It wasn't a full
just over a year.
Close to it. It was like the longest storyline arc I think that probably had ever been done, at least in our company. It took a long time to let that thing build, and Sting did a phenomenal job with it. By the way, that idea was Scott Hall's idea. That character was Scott Hall's idea. It wasn't mine.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought it was Sting's idea.
No, it wasn't.
Huh.
I remember, and this is one of the few things I remember like crystal clear, vividly, almost like it happened 5 minutes ago. We were all sitting around and talking about different characters and different things Sting could be doing. And Scott Hall had brought up the Crow character that Brandon Lee played in the movie where he was shot and killed. And it was that dark, kind of brooding, scary-looking character. That was all Scott Hall. And I remember sitting back listening to Scott describe it to Sting, and I was watching Sting's eyes light up because he got it, and it resonated with him. And I just sat back and let it build because it was really good.
Yeah.
But we had been building that for a year, knowing where it was going to go, knowing that we wanted Hulk to put Sting over. I'm not going to even play around the edges of what was going on in Sting's life. That's his responsibility, or his choice, I should say. So suffice it to say, there were things going on in Sting's life at that time that I was unaware of. And it was affecting him. And combined with the fact that every time Sting showed up, Rick, you know this, he didn't get in tights and get in the ring and pound his chest and wrestle for 14 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour. He showed up and he had a long overcoat and he had a vulture on his shoulder and he sat up in the rafters and made everybody scared, didn't have to say a word.
Yeah.
Well, what had happened over the course of a year is Sting hadn't been working out. He wasn't engaged. He'd show up, he would do his thing, he would do it very well. It was great. He'd get on a plane the next morning, he'd disappear, we wouldn't see him for a week. And that's the way it worked. That's all we needed. We all, was working, got along great, everything was fine. But we finally get to Starrcade, and it was time to talk about, where we're going with things. And Sting came in. I'll never forget. Sting came in, and I think it was in Washington D.C. If I'm
That's
correct.
right, MCI Center.
And came into my office, and Hulk was there, and it was the first time we'd really seen him, up close and personal. And he was milk white, and hadn't looked like he'd been in the gym in a long time, and it was a little bit apprehensive and reserved, more so than he normally would be. Now, maybe knowing Steve, he was kind of expecting the worst and from Hulk, and wasn't sure we were really committed, and so therefore to us it came off like he really wasn't that engaged. I'm not sure, but at the end of our first meeting, talking about where things were going, when it was over, Hulk and I both looked at each other and go, man, we can't go there. He didn't get ready for this. He's not ready. It didn't feel to us like it was a priority.
Was that the day of the event?
Yeah.
The day of? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's when, again, my decision. And I'm not, Hulk Hogan takes the heat for this. Like, he changed the finish and he didn't want to do it. BS. That was my call. Right or wrong, it was my call. And Hulk did not throw down and say, I'm not doing this favor for him. Or he was concerned, as I was, over the same issue, but Hulk did not throw down and draw the line in the sand. It was my decision. And as a consequence of a last-minute, change of plans, we probably came up with a bad way to try to end it, with controversy and all that kind of shit. But clearly that didn't work, and that's my responsibility.